Imagine being so poor that you clean the mansion of a billionaire just to feed your family. And then one day, fate forces you to steal the only thing he loves more than money, his prized motorcycle, to save his dying son. What the billionaire did next left the whole world shocked. This isn't just a story, it's a roller coaster of betrayal, sacrifice, and redemption. Stay tuned, and before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon, because the twists you're about to hear are unlike anything you've ever imagined. Maria had been a maid in the Ashton estate for almost 6 years, scrubbing marble floors that shone brighter than her future, polishing chandeliers worth more than her entire neighborhood, and silently serving drinks at parties where laughter flowed like wine, though none of it belonged to her. She belonged only to her debts, her poverty, and the suffocating desperation of raising her only child, Leo, a frail little boy whose lungs betrayed him each night with cruel, wheezing coughs that medicine couldn't soothe, at least not the cheap medicine she could afford. The doctor had said he needed urgent treatment, expensive treatment that could give him a chance at life. Treatment Maria could never dream of paying for on a maid's salary. And so every day she prayed while scrubbing the billionaire's palace, watching Mr. Damien Ashton, a man with cold eyes and hotter engines, stride through life as though the world itself bent to his will. His collection of motorcycles gleaming like trophies of his conquests, each one more expensive than Maria's lifetime wages, but none more cherished than the black and silver beast he called Phantom, a machine custom-built, rare and dangerous, the one thing he never let anyone touch, not even his closest friends. It was during one stormy night, when Leo's breathing collapsed into desperate gasps, that Maria made the choice that would forever change everything. Running through the mansion corridors, with tears blinding her eyes, sneaking into the garage where Phantom waited like a sleeping dragon, its chrome teeth glistening under fluorescent light. And with trembling hands, she gripped the keys she had secretly copied weeks earlier in her moments of unbearable fear, whispering an apology to the master she had served so loyally, and to the guard she hoped would forgive her, before she straddled the machine, kicked it alive, and roared into the night toward the hospital, the sound of the engine drowning out her own sobs, unaware that Damien Ashton was watching from the shadows, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and a look on his face that was not anger, not yet, but something far more dangerous, curiosity. Because though Maria thought she was stealing from a man who would destroy her, Damien Ashton was about to show her and the world that sometimes the richest hearts hide their deepest scars, and sometimes a single act of defiance can tear down empires or build them anew. The hospital doors burst open as Maria skidded in with Phantom's engine still echoing like thunder outside, nurses rushing toward the limp boy in her arms, her cries slicing through the sterile air as she begged them to save her son. And while doctors hurried Leo into the emergency room, Maria collapsed in the corridor, her chest heaving, knowing she had just committed the one act that could cost her everything: her job, her freedom, even her dignity. But none of it mattered compared to Leo's fragile breath. And then, just as the fluorescent lights buzzed above, a darker shadow fell across her, the sound of polished shoes clicking like a countdown. And when she lifted her swollen eyes, she saw him, Damien Ashton himself, the billionaire whose motorcycle she had stolen, standing tall in his tailored black suit, rain dripping from his shoulders. His jaw clenched with unreadable fury, and Maria fell to her knees, whispering apologies, begging forgiveness, expecting him to drag her away. But instead, Damien's gaze darted to the double doors where Leo had disappeared, and for a fleeting second the mask of steel cracked, his face tightening with something Maria had never seen in him: pain, raw and unguarded, as if the boy's struggle had ripped open an old wound in his own chest. "Why?" he demanded, his voice sharp but trembling beneath the surface. And Maria poured out her truth in a flood of words: her poverty, the doctor's warnings, the nights of endless coughing, the helplessness that drove her to the garage. And when she finished, silence filled the hall, except for the faint beep of machines behind the doors. Silence that stretched until Damien finally knelt down, leveled his eyes with hers and said, "You don't know what you've done." Before she could speak, a nurse rushed out, announcing that Leo needed an immediate surgery costing more than Maria could earn in a lifetime. And she broke again, but Damien didn't hesitate, striding forward. Tossing his black card at the counter, his voice steady as iron as he ordered, "Do whatever it takes, charge it all to me," leaving Maria stunned, trembling with gratitude and fear, because this was no act of mercy. It was something else, something heavier. And as the night deepened, the surgery began, but so did questions Maria could not silence. Why would the cold billionaire risk so much for her child? Why had his eyes glistened with unshed tears when he looked at Leo? And why did his hands shake ever so slightly when he lit his next cigar outside, staring into the storm as if he were watching ghosts ride by on every bolt of lightning? When the surgery lights finally dimmed and the doctor stepped out with a weary smile, telling Maria that Leo had survived the night, she collapsed into Damien's arms without thinking, sobbing with relief. But the billionaire stood stiff, his eyes locked not on her but on the boy's fragile frame, wheeled past them. And as Maria thanked him with trembling words, Damien finally spoke the truth that chilled her to the core. Leo reminded him of his own son, a boy he had lost years ago in a tragic accident, a boy whose life might have been saved if not for Damien's obsession with speed and motorcycles. Maria froze, realizing Phantom was not just a machine to him, but a shrine of guilt, the last connection to the child he could never bring back. And now, watching Leo breathe, he saw a chance at redemption he didn't even know he craved. But what Maria didn't know was that Damien's enemies had been watching too, business rivals who despised him, waiting for the moment to strike. And by dawn, whispers spread that the Maid had stolen his motorcycle. Rumors twisted into headlines, and Maria's act of desperation became a scandal that threatened not only her survival, but also Damien's empire, forcing them both into a storm far greater than either had imagined. The headlines spread like wildfire. Billionaire's Maid steals custom motorcycle, plastered across tabloids and social media, twisting Maria into a thief and Damien into a fool who had been played. And though the world mocked them, inside the hospital room where Leo slowly opened his eyes, a very different battle was unfolding, one not of reputation, but of redemption. Maria, overwhelmed with shame, tried to resign the very moment her son awoke, insisting that Damien had done enough, and she could not allow him to suffer ruin for her desperate crime. But Damien stopped her with a quiet firmness that carried the weight of years of hidden sorrow, confessing that for the first time since his son's death, he felt like he had done something that mattered, something human, and he would not let her walk away. Not yet. Not when the boy who had been saved had given him a reason to fight again. Yet as he spoke, the doors to Leo's room flew open and a group of suited men stormed in, lawyers and rivals who had been circling Damien's empire like vultures, armed with threats of lawsuits and demands for resignations, using Maria's theft as the weapon to crush him once and for all. And in that moment, Maria, trembling but unbroken, stood in front of Damien, declaring the truth of why she had stolen Phantom. Every word raw and unpolished, but powerful enough to silence the room, her courage forcing even the coldest lawyer to hesitate. Damien, seizing the pause, announced boldly that he would not press charges against Maria, instead claiming the theft as his own choice. "I gave her that motorcycle," he lied smoothly, "because no price is too high for saving a child's life." A statement that flipped the scandal into a story of sacrifice. And within hours, the media frenzy shifted from ridicule to admiration, calling him a billionaire with a heart while painting Maria as the symbol of a mother's undying love. Yet behind the polished headlines, only the two of them knew the truth, that a bond had been forged in desperation and sealed in sacrifice. A bond that healed not just Leo's broken body, but also Damien's shattered soul. And as autumn leaves fell around the Ashton estate weeks later, Maria returned not as a mere maid, but as someone Damien trusted like family. watching Leo run across the lawn with laughter in his chest, where once there had been only coughs, and Damien, for the first time in years, smiled without regret, the roar of phantoms silent in the garage, no longer a shrine of guilt, but a reminder of the night when a poor maid's crime saved a boy's life and in turn saved a billionaire's heart.